Federal prosecutors have filed charges against 19 people, accusing them of running an open-air drug market.
America, we just witnessed the takedown of one of the most brazen drug operations in New York City history. Federal agents arrested 19 members of a criminal enterprise that turned Washington Square Park into an open-air drug market, distributing millions of doses of fentanyl and heroin that killed at least 2 people and caused 65 overdoses. But here's what's really shocking. These criminals have been arrested over 80 times by local police and kept getting released back into the streets and continued poisoning communities. What is up, guys? Tyson Dela Cruz here. Thank you so much for rocking with me. This story perfectly exposes how New York's soft on crime policies create a revolving door for drug dealers, while federal intervention finally brings real justice. Let me break down what federal prosecutors uncovered in this massive investigation. We're talking about a sophisticated criminal network called WSP Enterprise that was operating 2 primary groups, members of the Mac Ballers subset of the Bloods gang and dealers working under John Lavigny, who had been selling drugs in Washington Square Park for over 20 years.
The Justice Department has charged 19 individuals accused of running an open-air drug market in New York City's Washington Square Park. The U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York detailed the charges. Prosecutors allege the suspects engaged in the large-scale distribution of fentanyl, heroin, and crack cocaine.
This wasn't just random street dealing. This was an organized criminal enterprise with territorial agreements, color-coded drug bags, and a systematic approach to avoid law enforcement. 2 groups had agreements not to sell in each other's territory and use different colored bags to differentiate their deadly drug cocktails. According to the federal indictment, this network distributed millions of doses of opioids, including fentanyl and heroin, as well as crack cocaine, that were directly linked to at least 65 overdoses in the park since 2020. 2 of those overdoses were fatal, including an 18-year-old from Colorado who had just graduated high school.
5 people indicted on a federal drug charge related to the overdose death of actor Robert De Niro's grandson. More than a dozen have also been arrested after law enforcement officers say they busted up a criminal drug network operating in and around Washington Square Park.
But this operation was connected to even more high-profile deaths. In a separate but related case, 5 men were charged in connection with the overdose deaths of 3 19-year-olds in 2023, including actor Robert De Niro's grandson. And here's what really gets me fired up about this case. These 19 defendants had been arrested by NYPD's 6th precinct, get this, over 80 times for drug-related offenses and other crimes. Some of them had been arrested more than a half a dozen times each, and every single time, New York's broken criminal justice system let them back out and continue poisoning communities.
The feds say this drug-dealing suspect, Bruce Epperson, is holding 1 non-fatal overdose victim. They say Epperson was one of 5 members of a drug crew that pushed counterfeit Xanax and Oxy pills laced with fentanyl.
Take Malik Scarface Lug, one of the alleged Blood gang members. This man had been arrested 13 times, including 7 busts related to criminal possession of controlled substances dating back to 2001. On 2 occasions, he was arrested for allegedly flashing a firearm while robbing a 15-year-old and demanding money from a 52-year-old victim. Yet he kept getting released and continued his criminal activity. John Lavigny, the other major player, had been arrested more than 50 times between 1994 and 2023, including approximately 15 times in the 6th precinct for drug offenses, weapon charges, and larceny. His most recent arrest in the Washington Square Park area was in March 2021 for grand larceny, and he was back on the streets dealing drugs.
The defendants have collectively been arrested on drug charges at least 80 times since 2020. And according to the indictment, police have responded to more than 65 apparent drug overdoses in the area during the past 5 years.
This is exactly what's wrong with New York's criminal justice system. You can arrest the same drug dealers dozens of times, but if the system keeps releasing them, they'll keep poisoning communities. It took federal intervention operation to finally hold these criminals accountable. Let's talk about the real victims of this criminal enterprise, the people who died from the poison these dealers were selling. The federal indictment details 2 specific deaths that show exactly how this operation was killing young people. The first victim was an 18-year-old from Aspen, Colorado, who had just graduated high school and came to New York for a prestigious Broadway internship in June 2024. This young person asked somebody to get cocaine for their arrival, and that person ended up purchasing drugs from a purple bag allegedly supplied by Mr. Lug.
18-year-old Bailey Shaw, who had just arrived in the city 2 days after graduating from high school. These drugs also killed 43-year-old sad homeless person who was found after someone reported a body on the sidewalk.
The person who bought the drugs texted the team this. Regular Mans was not there. Got you something from another trusted guy. Was just a little more expensive. And if you end up not liking it, I can get you some regular from the Mans, blah, blah, blah. I don't even know what he said. Perfect. I trust you. Obviously, this is a upstanding citizen who texts this, by the way. This 18-year-old was found dead with a purple bag of drugs under his wrist. Less than 6 months later, a 43-year-old homeless person who had been living in Washington Square area was found dead outside a Greenwich Village apartment building. Police discovered empty blue bags allegedly sold by the Lavigny team and purple baggies used by the blood gangs right next to his body. This Washington Square Park operation is a perfect example of how the fentanyl crisis is destroying American communities. From 2020 to 2023 alone, more than 10,000 people died from fatal drug poisoning in New York City. Fentanyl was involved in approximately 80% of those deaths. Over 8,000 people were killed by this synthetic poison. What makes this operation particularly egregious is how these criminals were using social media platforms to target teenagers and young adults. They were using Snapchat, TikTok, Instagram, and Telegram to promote and sell counterfeit prescription drugs laced with Fenty. The purple bags allegedly preferred by Lug included fentanyl that were marketed as a particularly powerful type of dope. These weren't just drugs, they were weapons of mass destruction disguised as recreational substances. After years of local authorities failing to stop this criminal enterprise, federal law enforcement finally stepped in with real consequences. All 19 defendants have been charged with conspiring to distribute narcotics, resulting in death, which carries a mandatory minimum sentence of 20 years in prison and a maximum sentence of life in prison.
Prosecutors saying there were 3,000 overdose-related deaths in 2023 from fentanyl, and fentanyl was responsible for 80% of them. Many of the victims were teenagers.
Fentanyl destroys lives and tears families apart. It poisons our communities, and it is especially dangerous for the young people in our city.
U.S. Attorney Jay Clayton made it clear that this operation was about protecting communities. New York families want us to use all available resources to get deadly fentanyl off the streets. Together with the NYPD and the DEA, our office made a commitment to find and bring justice to those who target our children and our parks. DEA Special Agent in Charge Frank Torrentino said every person, every child deserves the right to live, play, and enjoy a place free of crime, whether it's a block where you live, the park where you play, or the bench where you read a book.
The tragic deaths at the heart of today's cases are every parent's nightmare. These deaths show how drug trafficking impacts victims from across all economic and social backgrounds. New Yorkers want this stopped, and they want the dealers and suppliers to be brought to justice.
NYPD Commissioner Jessica Teach said it perfectly. These drug traffickers allegedly flooded Washington Square Park with dangerous narcotics that claimed 2 lives and harmed countless more individuals. They turned this iconic park into an open-air drug market, jeopardizing the safety and quality of life of families, students, and our entire community. America, this Washington Square Park bus perfectly illustrates both the the problem and the solution when it comes to the fentanyl crisis destroying our communities. For years, local authorities arrested the same drug dealers over and over again, only to see them released back into the streets to continue poisoning young people. 80 arrests among 19 defendants, and they kept getting released. An 18-year-old from Colorado dead 2 days after arriving for a Broadway internship. A homeless person found dead with an empty bag of drugs next to their body. 65 overdoses in one park. This is what happens when you don't have serious consequences for drug dealers. But this federal operation shows what happens when we finally get serious about holding these criminals accountable. 20 years to life in prison for conspiracy to distribute narcotics resulting in death. That's real justice for families who lost loved ones to this poison. The message from federal law enforcement is clear. If you're trafficking Fenty and killing Americans, you're going to face serious federal time. No more revolving door of justice. No more slaps on the wrist. Real consequences for real crimes. Let me know what you think about this. Drop it down in the comments section down below. Smash the like button if you kindly would. Share, subscribe, and as always, guys, I'll catch you on the next one.